love performing. Yes, we loved being at the Renaissance Fair, but it was the people that kept us coming back, like you or David or anybody else on cast that we became friends with. Like, we were there for them. Especially the weekends when we got real tired, like week 6, we were not there for us. We were there for the people that were alive.
Bienvenue. Welcome to Coffee Talk with King Francois I, where we will discover the tales, trials, and talents of Renaissance Festival performers, merchants, and die-hard attendees as we journey by way of lighthearted and even at times heartwarming conversations about the Renaissance Festival world. I am your host, Theodore Jander, aka King Francois I. Bonjour. Welcome to Coffee Talk with King Francois I, episode 17. I am your host, Theodore Jander. In this coffee talk, you will share in my conversation with Samantha and Taylor Crites, who are both part of the recently formed Locks and Ladies. It was a real treat learning about their introduction into the Ren Faire world, reminiscing about their first year on cast for the St. Louis Renaissance Festival, hearing their outlook for continued Ren Faire performing, and more. As we did last episode, before we jump into our conversation, a little coffee humor to start things brewing. What does a gossiping coffee do? If you answered spill the beans, you are correct. Well, now with that bit of jovial Joe to keep us grounded, grab a cup of your favorite brew, sit back, and enjoy this episode of Coffee Talk with King Francois I. Thank you for tuning in to Coffee Talk with King Francois I and this week's guests, Samantha and Taylor Crites. And welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
You're very welcome, and thank you for taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to chat and talk about all things Renaissance Festival. One of the things that we will start off with, as it is Coffee Talk with King Francois I, figured we start with a couple of coffee-oriented questions. So first of all, are you both coffee drinkers? And if so, how do you take your coffee? And do you have a favorite roast?
We are both very big coffee drinkers. There's not a particular roast, but we go to Scooters, I'd say at least 3 to 5 times a week. I prefer the sweeter stuff, so I always get something iced with lots and lots of sugar.
Okay.
I swing back and forth. Every once in a while, most of the time I do a latte because I can drink it quickly. But if I'm making the coffee, it's typically just black coffee.
Black coffee. All right. Nice. And Scooters, I imagine, is a coffee shop.
Scooters is a coffee shop. It's up there with Starbucks and Dunkin', but they started popping up around the Midwest.
Like right after COVID.
Yeah, like right after COVID.
And they're everywhere now.
And they have some of the best coffee I've tasted from like a drive-through coffee shop. I'd say it's better than Starbucks and Dunkin'.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the next time I go through Columbia, I will definitely have to stop in. Cool. And I would imagine that leads very well into the next question. I would imagine then that Scooters is your favorite coffee shop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of that?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Continuing with the coffee motif, if you could have coffee with an historical figure, who would you choose and why?
So I would pick right now, because I just finished the show, Catherine the Great. I just finished the show, The Great, and I think she would be a really good person to sit down and talk with, because through the show, you learn that she's one of the first people that was like, women deserve rights and we need to make changes in this country. And just how she took over Russia, even though she was from Germany, and just learning about her would be so cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
You ask the hard-hitting questions, and that's what I enjoy about your program here. I'm kind of torn because part of me wants to say Doc Watson. In my opinion, he's the best guitar player that's ever lived. And obviously that's going to attract me. But part of me also wants to say like Andrew Tate, because like sit down, is it all an act? Is it for clicks? Is that who Andrew Tate actually is? I think if you could get behind the facade of the ultra male bro crap, there might actually be something interesting to learn there.
And so for the listeners, who exactly is Andrew Tate?
He's a very controversial internet figure who kind of promotes the alpha male persona to the ultimate degree.
Nice. All right. So that's going with the whole alpha kind of contrast, the Catherine the Great, women's rights, and then you have someone promoting all things mannish. So
don't get me wrong. I don't like Andrew Tate.
Yeah, we don't like Andrew Tate.
Okay.
But I think sitting down and having a conversation with Andrew Tate would be one of the most fascinating things, because this man is just going to spew nonsense for hours.
Right. Yep.
And being able to see that face to face, I think I just die laughing. I think it would be so enjoyable for terrible reasons.
Agreed. There are probably a great number of people throughout history who, though we dislike them or like them, whichever, those conversations could be entertaining on multiple facets. So from the coffee side of things, historical conversations, that leads us into why you're here, is to talk about Renaissance festivals and your involvement in them. So the initial question is, when was the first time you attended a Renaissance festival? And if you had attended first, or did you just jump right into performing on stage or as part of the cast?
So the first time we went to a Renaissance festival was actually in May of this year.
We went to the King City Ren Faire. And I had a little too much mead. And I went up to the royalty there and I sang a song for them. And it just so happened that David was up there. And he heard me sing and he was like, I want you. You're coming to this. And here we are.
Wow. That's a quick introduction. That's pretty brilliant.
Liquid courage.
Liquid
courage got me. Like, he wasn't even around when that happened either. He had run off with some of our other friends and was like looking at booths. And I was just sitting there like mesmerized by the pretty costumes that the queens were wearing. And then one of them was like, hello, who are you? And I was like, well, I'm Samantha. I'm a bard. And they're like, you're a bard? Can you sing for us? And I was like, of course I can sing for you. Nice. And you just sing for the right people and meet the right people. And got to the auditions at St. Louis and
jumped in with both feet.
Yeah, you definitely did jump in with both feet. That's cool. And it's amazing those instances that you'll have for performing. You just never know who you're going to be performing in front of and who will hear you. And you had the opportunity to have David Edwards, who's the cast director and also has portrayed Henry VIII, hear you. And that's really pretty brilliant. Sweet. So as a performer, obviously singing is a big part, Samantha, for what you do. In one or two sentences, describe, other than singing, what it is that you have done or did as part of the Renaissance Festival in St. Louis.
I was the fake Cinderella.
Okay.
So I stole the queen's pearls, ran around the fair, did mischief, and then turned into a princess at the end of the day.
Okay, and I'm guessing singing was a part of.
So I got to sing. I got to sing during the open, as we opened fair, and then week 2, David Edwards asked us if we could become a stage act because they needed somebody to cover a stage to direct from the Rated R show so that kids would come see us rather than go to the Rated R show.
Nice. And then Taylor.
This year I was King Henry's, I guess, bard, personal musician. So I would commandeer Lady Sadie during the day, and we would perform romance packages during the jousts, basically singing little goofy love songs.
Oh, sweet.
We, like she said, also performed the stage show. So music and general tomfoolery is what I was up to most of the time.
Nice. And when you say that you created a stage show based on David Edwards asking to fill a spot and to provide an alternative, what was the show that you put together?
So we were originally just asked to get up and play whatever we could. And we did that, I think, the first day that we were asked, but very quickly we roped in a couple other errant cast members who were musically inclined, and we would get up and play for just under 30 minutes, I think.
We played bluegrass, folk music, some pop tunes here and there.
Okay.
Mostly what we knew how to play and could play right then and there.
Right.
Was what we needed to do, because we got 45 minutes warning on that second weekend.
Yeah.
Hey, we need you to be a stage show at 11. So at 10, David Edwards said, we need you to be a stage show in an hour. And both of us were like,
oh crap.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we looked up some of the songs that we knew, looked up the chords. And that first day we were on our phones, looking at the chords, learning the music as we went. But as the weeks went on, like we set up a set list, we put more songs together that we thought would go well with the fair and matched everything else that we were doing. Our band members were awesome in providing other music that we didn't know. We might not have known how to play it, but we knew the song, and just coming together and learning all of that music.
I think we were able to succeed because of our ability to pull from the cast and kind of expand and diversify our sound. And what started off as a very nervous and kind of by the seat of your pants experience.
Yeah.
By the end of our run, I think we were very comfortable in kind of putting on a decent show. Yeah. Considering we weren't able to practice. We, only got our performances as rehearsals, which was a really fun experience to go through.
But that last Sunday, we got asked to just randomly do hymns. So we did Amazing Grace and something else. And we did it our style, which is like bluegrass broken down a little faster. And it was received amazingly by anybody that came by the stage.
Brilliant.
So going from being really, really nervous and not knowing what we're doing to being able to just pull something out and make it into something amazing. I think that shows how much we grew over the 5 weeks that we were able to be a stage show.
I don't know, having been involved with that Renaissance Festival for over 20 years, to have seen, especially anybody new into cast, to be able to jump in as you did, to then be asked to do what you did, is mind-blowing, because I don't know if I'd really remember seeing anybody be able to just, you have an hour to put on a stage act. And I watched the progression over the 5 weeks. Yeah, I could tell at the beginning, it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And then, to go to the end and to have that kind of a reception. And honestly, I think a Renaissance Festival is probably one of the only places that could really, truly happen.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Anywhere else, nobody would have asked two random people to just jump on stage, especially being as new as we are, because
not very well credentialed.
Yeah, we were not. I don't think anywhere else would have been able to say, you two do that and it actually go well.
I don't even know if I would have been terribly comfortable jumping into something like that, even though I've been there for 20 years.
It wasn't comfy.
It was not comfy. No. That first weekend that we got thrown in, especially that Saturday, was absolutely terrifying, because we didn't know what we were doing.
True.
We've been performing together since we started dating. So we knew how to work together, but then adding in other band members and being like, well, what can you do? And how do we work together? And do that on the fly, that's hard. I've been performing for years. And that was one of the harder things that I've ever had to do, was that first Saturday of just, what do we do? You have to perform in an hour. You need to find something to do. What do you do?
Now, did your band have a name?
Locks and Ladies.
The award-winning
Locks and Ladies.
Were you really?
Yeah,
yes, we were voted the best new stage show.
Fantastic. I don't think I knew that.
We were the only new stage show.
Yeah, we were the only new stage show, but we won. So we are the award-winning.
Well, hey, there you go. You can't beat that. Yeah, you got the credentials now. So so I would say then for you, Samantha, saying that you've been performing for years, and I know that part of your background is you teach music. So I would imagine then that your education, any jobs that you've had before coming to the Renaissance Festival, did they play a part in? I would say they definitely played a part in your involvement.
Oh yeah. So I went to Mizzou for music education. While I was there, I did all types of performing. I was in their university choir, which traveled the world. So I went to China my freshman year of college and got to sing in China. I went to Sweden my junior year of college and got to sing in Sweden. I did opera while I was in college. So I performed many different operas while I was there. I've been trained to do musical theater. I've been trained to do jazz. There's not a lot of things I haven't performed at this point, but even going back farther than that, I've been doing something on stage since I was about 7, 8 years old. My dad growing up was a DJ. And when my parents got together and he saw that I had potential in singing, he pushed me to do anything and everything music that I could. And I think between him pushing me and then going to Mizzou and getting classically trained, the performances I have under my belt are vast.
I would say so. And yeah, that's a lot of years, and that you've stuck with it and that you're doing it, but it shows.
And then I made a career out of it by turning it into education.
Right.
I mean, I love music and I love kids. So the obvious connection would be to go and teach. The Renaissance Fair has put the performance bug back in. And now I'm like, do I really want to teach music, or do I want to be the one to go out and perform music? But I can't leave my kids.
Yeah. I would think depending on how you plan, or if you plan on continuing with Renaissance festivals, the great thing about Renaissance festivals is they happen on the weekends. There are a few that only run a couple of weekends, and then there are some that run a lot of weekends, but it's the weekends. And as a teacher,
yeah,
yeah. And depending on the summer schedule goes, you typically have evenings, and most everybody that I know of though they're professionals, they have multiple jobs. I mean, they have kind of their day job, and then they have their professional music performance job too. And then they manage to work
both
around all of it. Yeah.
Which is one thing that we've learned a lot from the other stage acts at the Ren Faire was, one, if you go up and ask them any questions, every single stage act was so receptive to us and helped so much. And that was not something we were expecting. And the other thing was, talking to them, they gave us so much advice on, here's how you keep your day job while still doing this performance on the side, so that you get the money that you need to survive, but you're also fulfilling the performance dream that you have.
Right. Sweet. Nice. And so Taylor, how about you? I mean, as far as your background, music-wise?
Professionally, I don't do anything music related. I work for the Boy Scouts. And I absolutely love doing that. I'm an Eagle Scout, so it really brings me a lot of pride to give back to an organization that gave me a lot growing up. But I've been playing, I was in band in high school and choir as well, and went to Mizzou for music for a little while. But my real joy and passion is in bluegrass and folk music.
Okay.
And I've been playing that with my pawpaw since I was probably about 13 or 14. And the absolute best experience that I got out of this was he came to the fair, I think our second or third weekend. And I got to be on a kind of paid gig and be able to sing a song with the reason that I'm into music. And his hearing's starting to go, and he's not really able to play as well anymore. So being able to do that before he's not able to really means a lot.
I cried during all that performance. That was, I couldn't even sing. I was standing in the back just sobbing, watching them perform together.
Beautiful. That's one of the aspects of Renaissance festivals that's unique to that environment, is that you have, as performers, the opportunity to engage with the audience. And the audience, yes, they're an audience, but for you to be able to sit down and perform in that way, to engage with them and to have that kind of an experience, it's so different than when you're on stage.
Yeah.
And like you said,
the audience is right on you. Like there's no escaping. You can't make any facial expression, any mess up, anything. They are going to notice immediately because they are right on top of you. Whereas on stage, like you have that space to make those mistakes or do anything else. Which
it's a much more intimate environment.
It's a very much more intimate environment.
That's what makes it so unique and great, is because of that intimacy, that connection that you can have. So what's one unexpected way in which you're performing as part of the Renaissance Festival, either as part of the cast or as part of Locks and Ladies, helped you to grow or benefited you as a person?
I think this entire experience has helped us both grow as people. I know for me, I had a very bad experience right before I met Taylor, where an ex-partner told me that my performance dreams are trash, that I could never do this. Yeah. That I could never do this. I couldn't make a career out of it. I wasn't good enough. And being able to finally do the performance again, because I hadn't been able to really get on stage since that had happened. And being able to get on stage again, I was able to find myself, honestly. A piece that had been broken for years finally came back together because I had the opportunity to do something special that nobody else really gets to do. And it brought me back. The other thing is it brought us closer together. Being able to perform with your significant other is something super special. And I know anytime that we got to perform for the romance packages where it was just us singing for a couple, being able to see the couples that we sang for, look at each other and see the love that we were not giving them, but it helped bring it out and they could see themselves in the songs that we were singing. I think that made us grow closer together just because we were being able to see the joy that we could bring as we were performing with one another.
Absolutely. Could you repeat the question again? I kind of got lost in her answer.
No, that's all right. No, I would agree. Yeah. So what's one unexpected way in which you're performing as part of the Renaissance Festival has grown you as a person or benefited you as a person?
I am not an actor in any stretch of imagination. So having to go out and put on a character was a decent challenge for me. And I think in doing so, it has encouraged me to embrace a little bit of discomfort a little more. So that's probably the biggest one for me, is just remembering, if you want to do fun stuff, you got to be uncomfortable sometimes.
Yep. So going outside of your comfort zone and I think performing and pushing, becoming a better person, becoming a better performer, musician, what have you. Yeah, it's pushing those boundaries. And having been involved with it for as long as I've been, to see new casts come in at the beginning of a season and where they started to where they ended up, or even people who've been involved for a number of years, to watch that growth. It's pretty brilliant because that's not an easy environment to come into. I mean, having been on stage and performing for an audience, and like you said, Samantha, there's that separation. Sure, the audience is there, but they're not there.
Yeah.
In essence. And you're on a stage, you have a background behind you, there's a scene and whatever, and it's all
scripted is the other thing.
Right. And all contained. And whereas the Renaissance Festival, I mean, it's theater in the round.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even so much theater.
You have your points that you need to hit throughout the day, but other than that, you're on your own.
Yeah.
Whatever you come up with is what your character is doing for that day. And if you don't have an idea what you're doing, you're either going to be hiding backstage, bored out of your mind all day, or you can go the other way and figure something out and have fun with it.
Yeah. I think Renaissance festivals are really the only, at least that I'm aware of, the only environment that you can really do that kind of a thing. Obviously, there are
improv on the stage.
Right.
But even then, you still have that separation factor. I think the fact that, I mean, there are stage shows at the Renaissance Fair, but if you're cast, your stage is the entire fair itself.
Yep.
And you have patrons as close as we are right now, and you have to be able to act in front of that patron, even if you're tired, even if you're hungry, even if your feet hurt, even if you're sunburnt, even if you have dust in your lungs.
I think the other thing that lends to this kind of unique Renaissance Fair malleability is in a normal performance, you have a set run time. Whereas with the Ren Faire, your runtime is from 10 in the morning to 6 at night. So there's a wonky timeline. There's no script. It's all this interesting flux of characters and unexpected occurrences. And I don't know a great way to describe it. It's this weird, nebulous, kind of unique thing.
Well, it's definitely an organic experience. It's not to say that staged and theater isn't organic. It can be. But when you go to a performance that is an hour and a half long, it's all scripted. It's essentially the same show, even though there's some of that that's instilled in the cast, is that you are putting on a show. You want to make sure that you're keeping that congruity from day to day. But there is so much that can happen between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. And each day is going to be very different.
Well, and I remember there was times when either people would be getting sick throughout the day, either from congestion or the dust, the dust, or like somebody twisted their ankle and couldn't do their dance at the end of the day. And so we have to change everything about closing because one person can't be there and they're a crucial part to that last thing. Or people coming up with ideas throughout the end on how to make closing better. And you have to find those people throughout the day to make that closing work.
Right.
That's not something that happens on stage at all. Like, you have your set script, you have your set points that you need to hit. And if you don't, your director is going to be mad. As in the Renaissance Fair, if there's certain points that you do have to hit, but for the most part, it's all improv. And what David Edwards, our boss, is looking for is, can you do improv? Can you work on the fly? And are you entertaining?
Yeah. And it's not entertaining for ourselves. I mean, there's a huge audience that, yes, you're engaging with other casts. So there's an engagement there. There are so many different people that you're interacting with, which is, as we've stated, separates Renaissance festivals from a stage show, because ultimately your only audience are the people sitting and watching. You obviously have the interactions between you and somebody else on stage. And it's not to diminish what
happens
those people do. I mean, because
it's completely different.
Yeah, I've been on both sides of it as well. And there are similarities, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of intense work, because most stage shows, you're looking at an absurd amount of work in a good way, but in a shorter time frame.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Renaissance Festival, in a lot of cases, you're starting several months out in preparations. And then you have, depending on the festival, like St. Louis right now is 6 weeks.
Yeah.
6 weekends. And there are Renaissance festivals that are 9 weekends, 10 weekends.
Kansas City that runs almost.
Yeah, they run some. Yeah. And there are things outside of just those 6 weekends that happen, from promotional events and all of those kinds of things that the cast, the stage acts, etc., then have the potential of being a part of. One of the things that happens in the course of a Renaissance festival is a joust. As this is a Renaissance Festival oriented podcast, the question is this: who would win in a joust, you or the royal jester, and why?
Me. I would win.
Okay.
So first weekend, they have the combat where you can fight with the foam swords and the shields and everything. We fought each other. Mm-hmm. And I'm smart. And I picked a really long sword and I picked a shield that covered half my body. Would you like to tell the audience what you picked, dear husband?
I picked a hammer.
And like a little tiny shield. So I'm tiny, so I duck behind my shield. He can't hit me at all because he picked a hammer. And I just go, pop. And I got him out all 3 times. He was on the ground and I was not. So nice. I would win.
I think the court jester would win. The way I understand it is jousting is 1 part being able to take a hit and 3 parts good horsemanship. Yeah. And I've been on a horse exactly twice in my life. Okay. So I think I'm getting put in there.
I can see that. I hadn't actually really thought about that component of jousting. Yeah, it's definitely, it's the ability to take a hit. And I've seen some hits because, ouch. And that horsemanship.
Like jousting's half acting, but they take hits. Like that's not easy.
Was it Roderick that was the knight for our last weekend?
I think so.
He knows how to take a hit and make it look real. He was diving that horse.
Great. And that alone is a different kind of performance. I've been to medieval times and those kinds of things. And it's very similar where, you're performing, but you're adding the component of an animal that's part of the show. And then the choreography while on an animal. Renaissance festivals as a whole, there's so many different types of performing and things that can be experienced. I think most of us that are involved, become involved, learn to love about Renaissance festivals because it is such a unique world.
Yeah. Well, and I think every single joust was different. Like we saw every single joust, all 6 weekends. We were there for every single one. That every time you see something different that the people on the joust field do, you see a different kind of hit or blood go somewhere else.
Right. Yeah.
Which is a bit more interesting because they could have easily just kept the same script for all weekends, but there was something different that they changed every single time, which made it easier for us to go watch.
Right.
Also helps keep it organic.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. And that was probably one of the biggest changes for this year's jousts compared to previous years, is that there was a change in who was jousting, who was the master of the list. So that kept things quite a bit more fresh, because having been doing that for as long as I have, I've seen all of these jousts, and you learn to come up with things. It's like looking for certain things. What's making this unique? And the Queen and myself have, for a number of years, have gone to rating the blood. Just how the
blood splatter.
The blood splatter. And I mean, it's all as it is corn syrup and I think red food coloring. And it's in this little package. Well, and some of it depends on angle. How much can you see and where you're at? But this year we added a new dynamic, rating the lance that breaks. So does it just have a little piece that falls off, or does it explode? But even then, that's something that's different too. You're not sure if the hits are going to go, if they're going to miss, those ring toss, everything, all of that together. So as we've been talking, even though you're really relatively new to the Renaissance Festival world, I would imagine even still that you would have an experience or a favorite memory that you would be willing to share. So what is one that you have, or a couple?
I think we're probably in agreement. There were, I think, 2 different couples that we performed for romance packages that were there for, I believe, their anniversaries. And like you mentioned earlier, seeing them hear what we're playing and not think about what we're doing. They're thinking about their own relationship and seeing the joy that we brought there. That I think that particularly is what gave me the bug to keep doing this more than the actual performance itself.
personally, one of my other favorite memories was closing. How we always raged at the very end and jumped around and danced and all of that. And while that was fun, my favorite part of that was seeing little girls in the audience, their eyes get big because they see me in this giant ball gown, but I'm dancing and going hard, and their eyes get big and they're like, we want to go out and dance. So pulling those little girls into the circle and being able to dance with some of the patrons, it was so much fun. Every single weekend, that was my favorite part, was being able to bring joy to the little girls that close. And yeah, it's just amazing.
I've attended several other festivals and have seen those kinds of significant and high energy kind of closings, because it's what draws people back. And for you to have that opportunity to engage with the patrons and pull them in, whether they're standing watching it to see that kind of energy, or like you said, to draw the children into it, to even to draw the adults into it, is such a great energy.
It is. Yeah. It's an experience that you really, truly don't get to see anywhere else. I know the last weekend that Totally Lost was there, and everybody, we went extra hard that weekend.
Yep.
Everybody was crying as we were jumping around laughing. Like, that's an experience that I will never forget.
Especially considering these are total strangers.
Yeah.
You know?
We just, not only are the patrons strangers, but like, while we've become friends with a lot of the different cast members, like, we don't know them outside of Faire. Like,
right.
We're starting to get to know them now that Faire is over. But like before then, we just knew them on the weekends as their person that they were on cast. But every day at closing, every single day at closing, we all came together. We all partied. We all jumped around and sang together. And it was it made it a community.
Yeah.
We knew that we were there for each other, at least at that very end point.
That harkens to something that I've heard several of my other guests share, and it's definitely something too that I've come to really appreciate, is how you can use the term as Renaissance Festival being family friendly, which is true, but understanding that the cast, the stage acts, the merchants, all the people even that are behind the scenes, who are manning the food booths, who are handling the promotional events and everything else, that it's all one huge family.
It really is.
And you're really going to feel that when you go to another Renaissance Festival, especially as a performer. And you can see a dynamic of that even as you go as a patron. But the hope is as you go through the experiences of attending more, performing it more, as you realize how significant that family aspect is.
It really is.
Yeah.
We kind of expected, because all Rennies are kind of weirdos, like, and we, every weekend that we had rehearsals, we would both be like, we don't really want to go. Like, it's a 2-hour drive for us. Do we really need to go to these rehearsals? But every single time we went to a rehearsal, every single time we went to an actual weekend that we were open, the people are what made us come back. Like, yes, we love performing. Yes, we loved being at the Renaissance Faire, but it was the people that kept us coming back, like you or David or anybody else on cast that we became friends with. Like, we were there for them, especially the weekends when we got real tired. Like week 6, we were not there for us. We were there for the people that were relying on us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's where there's similarity between what we do within the Renaissance Festival world, whether it's the theater world, whether it's the teaching world, even with the Boy Scouts, with anything really, it's about the people. It's that connection. And that's something that over the past couple of years, especially since COVID, there's a renewed energy, specifically at the St. Louis Renaissance Festival. And I would imagine it's something too that's very prevalent at other Renaissance festivals. There's been a growing need is the right word, but there's that connection, that human connection, and just how huge that is in anything that you do. And to participate in an organization, that's ultimately what we're about, is creating those connections, and to have that opportunity to be face to face with your audience, to talk with your audience. They're not just there watching you. But even then, even for stage performances, and like the performances that I personally have coming up, or when you have your kids, as you were mentioning before we started, of taking your second graders around caroling, you're providing, even though people are just watching, but there's an opportunity either before or after, or maybe even during, to engage, to talk with the people, to
make that human connection.
Yeah. And in today's day and time, it's huge because technology, as great as it is, I mean, obviously with this podcast being very technology driven, ultimately what it's about is embracing those connections that we have and sharing those connections. Because I think that's a huge part of what you do as performers, as a teacher, in your involvement with the Boy Scouts and as a performer. And then hopefully involvement with whether it's the St. Louis Renaissance Festival, the Central Missouri Renaissance Festival, other Renaissance festivals, depending on your involvement with other performers, whether it's Renaissance Festival oriented or not. It's a pretty brilliant thing to be a part of. So
it really is.
Yeah. For people considering becoming involved with the Renaissance Festival, whether it is as a performer, as part of cast, or as a stage act, even attending the Renaissance Festival or becoming a vendor, what's the best piece of advice that you could think of to offer?
This may not be the best advice, but it certainly worked for us. Nike, baby, just do it. We started thinking, you know what, we'll get on cast, be background characters, decide if we like it or not. And now we are dead set on coming back. We're, working on other music projects outside of the fair now. Just get involved.
Yeah.
Because you can always kind of tailor how involved you are.
Right.
But the biggest step is going to an audition,
just do it.
Meeting the people that you need to meet and getting there.
I think once you decide that you want to do the Renaissance Fair, either as cast or as stage performer, listen to the veterans. When they tell you that you need to start hydrating on Wednesday, you need to start hydrating on Wednesday. When they tell you you need to sit for a little bit and maybe eat something, you need to listen to them. They are not telling that to you to make you feel bad about yourself. They are telling you because they have been in your shoes before. They know what's going to make you successful. You need to listen.
That's where that family component again comes into play, where you're watching. We have each other's backs. We're looking out for each other. We want you to be successful. I think it was outstanding to watch the two of you grow over the course of those more than 6 weeks, because obviously with the rehearsal process leading up to it. And even though you have years of experience, there's still growth that can happen in that experience. And yeah, we don't want you to fall flat on your face at all.
Well, then you could see, not calling any cast members out by name, but the ones that didn't listen, they did not make it.
Oh, yeah. It can be a very difficult thing to have longevity when you don't listen to the people that have gone before. There are new things, or even having been doing it for as long as I have, and there are new things that I can learn every year. There are new things that come about, new things that are learned, new things that are discovered that can improve on what we're doing. And it's amazing to really how, as much as we try to not have our outside lives impact our performing, it can be challenging not to.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in this character. When you're this persona for such an extended period of time, it's hard to not have those things because you are potentially needing to touch base with the outside world, or you have these notifications. Thanks, technology. When I first started, it was a little easier to be separated from that because we weren't carrying around those notifications with us 24/7. But again, there we understand. We've been there. We've gone through it. And to share that and to share in that experience, to share in that new experiences with people is such a great thing. A couple other questions. One is there anything else that you would want to tell the listeners but haven't had a chance to do?
I've kind of touched on all of the things that were really important about my experience. What about you?
There was a conversation that I had with David, and where he said it could have been really easy for both of you to have a big head, and neither one of you did. And I think that goes along with, we wanted to make this the best experience for everybody around us.
Rising tides raise all ships.
Yes. And we also saw that with the other stage acts, in that anytime we went up to any single one of them, they could have easily said, oh, you're newbies. You're not even a real stage act. But every single stage act that was at the fair, anytime we talked to them, one, they praised us for what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And two, they gave us such good advice on how to stay a stage act, how to make this outside of the fair, and
how to draw people in for a show. What pitfalls to avoid. All of the other stage shows, I think, were incredibly welcoming, and not to sound like I thought they were terrible people or anything, but that's kind of something that I wasn't expecting.
The lack of big-headedness, because that could have been really easy for anybody at this fair to be like, well, I know what I'm doing better than you. I know what I'm doing better than you.
Right.
Never saw that anywhere.
Not in cast, not in stage shows, not in vendors,
anything. And that's not something I've seen in a lot of performance areas.
Kind of rare in performance areas.
It's very rare. And I think just to myself, like, yeah, we could have had a big head, but what good would that have done for anybody? Especially since the Ren Faire is rising tides raise all ships. And I think keeping that in mind, that you can still learn even if you think you're the best.
As we bring today's coffee talk with King Francois I to a close, are there any other festivals that obviously the St. Louis Renaissance Festival was your first performance Renaissance Festival situation. Are you looking at performing at any other ones? Do you have an online presence at all?
We currently have no online presence.
Good luck finding us on Facebook or social media. We haven't really discussed this, but I'm pretty sure we intend on joining either the cast or stage shows at Kingdom City, Central Missouri Renaissance Festival. We will be back in St. Louis come hell or high water next year. Horses can't keep us away. No. There's been brief talk about starting a band here in Columbia.
Name pending. So you might see us perform around Columbia here in the next couple months. Look for a couple yahoos with cigar box instruments and making a lot of noise.
Yeah.
All right. So all of that said, Samantha and Taylor, thank you so incredibly much for this absolutely wonderful conversation. It's been great to sit down and just have a full-fledged conversation about all things Renaissance Festival. And I'm sure that we could probably have all sorts of other conversations. Yes. Oh, yes. So do want to, again, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your Sunday afternoon to chat.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I guess we will see you starting in the summer again.
Very likely, and depending on how things play out in the spring and your involvement with Kingdom City. And
I'm sure you're involved with Kingdom City as well.
I attend. I come out and I attend, play a little, and so fantastic. Right. So as we close this out, do want to wish you that your day be filled with Renaissance merriment and blessings to you both in your craft.
Merriment, and merry
meet again. I do hope you enjoyed this episode with my guests, Samantha and Taylor Crites. Be on the lookout for the next episode to be released on Friday, May 19th, where I bring you Something to Help You Sleep 2.0. If you are a performer, merchant, staff, or diehard patron in or of the Renaissance Festival world and would like to be featured on Coffee Talk with King Francois I, reach out to me by way of clicking on the following link provided in the show notes: www.theodorejander.com/Coffee Talk Podcast. Would you like to receive early access every other week to each new episode, as well as receive a behind-the-scenes glimpse into the production and creative process for the podcast? If so, join the wonderful community of listeners supporting the show and making new things possible through Patreon. Learn more at www.patreon.com/Coffee Talk with King Francois. The link will be provided in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in to Coffee Talk with King Francois I. A bientôt. See you soon. Ciao for now and au revoir.